This has to be one of my favorite episodes ever recorded with Jan Marini, and it's such a simple episode because it was really a Q&A, like FAQ vibe, where we just shot different questions to her about so many different subjects and so many different things, and it was just really nice because I find sometimes it can be daunting when like you're listening to an entire episode about a concern or a subject per se, but we always have these little silly questions that are just sometimes so simple, and asking a professional like Jan Marini is just the best thing to do, and I just loved this episode so much.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Tash, because I mean, we love Jan. That's clear. We have
Yeah.
her on the podcast all the time.
Hmm.
And, there with the, so many trends that we see in the wellness industry, skincare specific or other related to supplements or anything, there's a lot of things that kind of go viral and if people hop on this bandwagon of trend, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's the good for you or that it's the right thing to do for you. So when we chat with Jan, I find what she does is she just answers things rawly, honestly, and she's basically an encyclopedia. Like she's
Yeah.
been around in this industry for a long time. She's a researcher. She 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 researches everything to see like where it is. She reads journals of medicine and she just gives you her raw, honest truth, which is fun and, enlightening at the same time because things can be confusing and we like to like get them simple when it comes to taking care of yourself and also your skincare. So welcome back to the podcast, Jan.
Jan, welcome back to the pod. We are so excited to have you again today. I'm really excited for this conversation because this is going to be a conversation on focused on frequently asked questions, which I think is really important to address because we talk about all these amazing subjects and all these different skin concerns and all these things, but sometimes we just really need to answer the simple questions that people have on the day to day, which might seem silly to some, but I think also is just really important. And there's a bunch of questions we have. We highlighted a couple of them. I know that I picked some of them personally so that I can get the answer to it and also to be added it as well.
Mhm.
But so I think our first question that we have for you today, which is something that I believe we've spoken about before, but like just we'll really dumb it down today, is can your diet really affect acne?
It absolutely can. It can be a major causative factor and it can exacerbate acne. And there's two main parts to this. Now, the first one is milk. And it's not because we give hormones to cattle, it's because we milk cows when they're pregnant. So in the wild, I always say if a mother cow gets pregnant, she will push her calf away. She won't allow it to nurse anymore because what happens is you're producing steroidal hormones. And these steroidal hormones are supposed to grow 2,000-pound cows. But for us, it can actually create some hormonal issues with our skin. So this is a study that was done by the American Academy of Dermatology, and it was printed, excuse me, it was actually sponsored by the Milk Board, but it was printed in the Mosby Journal of Dermatology, which is the main technical monthly journal. And they actually did the study on 47,000 nurses, repeated it on their sons and daughters, and they did two separate studies of 3,000 teenage girls and 3,000 teenage boys. It's conclusive. Now, when you talk about milk, I say milk, but really it has a lot to do with dairy. So if you were to switch over to, let's say, non-fat milk, it's actually worse because we add whey protein to non-fat milk, and whey protein is more concentrated, so it makes it worse. You have to also remember if you're eating protein bars, lots of times that's whey protein. If you're doing protein drinks, it's very often whey protein unless you do egg or let's say pea protein or collagen protein.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of food in which they would put whey protein into it as a filler. So you kind of need to look at your labels and keep in mind that that's going to be ice cream. That's going to be a lot of different dairy
Cheese.
foods. and it can make a big difference. That doesn't mean that your acne is going to go away overnight, but it's definitely a factor. Now, the second part are carbs, and it
Yeah.
has to do with the glycemic load. So when you have something that is high on the glycemic load, and that's a little bit different than the glycemic index. So it's not like looking at a candy bar and saying, okay, it's got lots of sugar. But there are foods, carbs in particular, that actually produce more sugar in the body than if you ate sugar. And they attach to every single cell in the body. It's inflammatory, but also it causes your insulin levels to go up. And when your insulin levels fluctuate, one of the things that the body does to take them down to a more consistent level is that you produce testosterone. So it's kind of like you're giving fuel to your acne. And so it's not just sugar, but for example, let's take a piece of whole wheat bread. That will actually produce more sugar than if you ate a quarter cup of sugar.
Oh, wow.
And think about when you sit down sometimes to something like a pasta dinner. So you have pasta, you have garlic bread, you might have a dessert, very, very high carb. So, it's not a matter of being real restrictive. It's a matter of keeping the carbs low and eating lots of leafy greens, vegetables, and protein. And we see that there is a lot less inflammation. We see that there are fewer pustules, and that's also a great way to eat to maintain your skin, to hopefully stave off aging to some extent.
Mm-hmm. I have a quick question because one of the main questions we ask people also often when we're dealing with acne is really their dairy consumption, like how much. But I've always understood that dairy causes an inflammation in the body. It causes mucus in the body. Is that what causes the acne?
No, it's the
Okay.
hormones. It's the hormones that the
Literally the
pregnant
hormone.
cow is producing.
Okay.
So somebody could be sensitive to dairy, and that's something that happens a lot. And that sensitivity might cause you to produce mucus, or it could cause different types of intestinal problems, but
Mhm.
that's not necessarily going to have anything to do with the acne. No.
Okay,
I know
interesting.
that I know that when I have like candy, like literal candy, I'll get like some breakouts. But it was interesting also in this summer when I ran half a marathon, I was carb loading. So I wasn't eating sugar, right? Like
Mhm.
obviously not, but I was eating a lot of carbs 48
Yes.
hours before my run to give me the energy I needed. And once I finished my half marathon, whatever, a couple days later, I noticed that I broke out. Like I was getting all
Yeah.
these little pimples, and like it wasn't even like, I know that when I get them around my chin it's very hormonal, like it's just time of the month, but I know that when I eat sugar or when I have the breakouts from the sugar from the food, it's always on my forehead.
Hmm.
That's where I'll like see it, or sometimes even here, but like mostly I'll get some breakouts on my forehead. But it was so interesting because I obviously didn't eat like cups of sugar or like candy or anything, but I was eating pasta, bagels, like all
Yeah.
those things, and I broke out
And
after, which
those actually will produce more sugar. So your liver is what's dumping the sugar. And so it goes through your liver, and your liver may actually release more sugar with those carbs than it would if you were eating candy.
yeah, I mean it
Don't
was
eat
very
candy. That doesn't mean you should eat candy.
no, it was definitely very beneficial for the run itself because of the amount of carbs
Mhm.
I needed. But I definitely saw it after, and I was like, "That's so interesting." Like, I know that when I eat like gummy bears and stuff like that, I'll always get like little, or if, like by chance, I'll have like a Coca Cola, which don't judge me for that. But I'll get like a little bit of a breakout. But when I had all that bread and pasta, I was like, "Oh, even this, I'm really like breaking out." But I just knew it's because I was carb loading. So it's just interesting. Whereas, like, let's say lactose or anything milk related doesn't affect me whatsoever.
And it's just kind of like how you see people that
Troubleshoot.
their lifestyle is not great. They don't get enough sleep. They don't eat a good diet, and they have gorgeous skin. Don't ask me why. And maybe it's genetic, but for most of us, we can be very reactive to those kinds of things.
Yeah. It's very,
Absolutely.
very interesting.
It is interesting. It is interesting. Okay, I have a question for you, Jan. And the question is, it's two part. What causes large pores? and how can you shrink them?
Okay, so there's a couple of causes of large pores. One is retentive matter. So if you've got clogged pores or blackheads, what that does is it causes the follicle to dilate. That's actually a mild form of acne.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a precursor. So some people can just have clogged pores and blackheads, but some people and not have papules or pustules. But sometimes people start off with clogged pores and blackheads, and it can actually progress. But anyway, what you're doing is you're causing that follicle to dilate. So when we use topical agents that actually can get into the follicle and they go after that retentive matter, we can see a difference. And literally within a day or two, you can see a difference. And then progressively over time, your follicles can get smaller and smaller looking. Now, follicles are not trapdoors. You can't just open them and close them, but you can progressively refine them to where you look like you don't have pores, literally. And I know because I had large pores because I had severe cystic acne. I'm a 2-time Accutane failure, but you don't see my pores at all. And but I'm constantly using topical agents that go after that retentive matter. Now, that would be things like our bioglycolic facial cleanser, things like BioClear, which is glycolic, salicylic, and azelaic acid, which are also very anti-aging. One of the things I want to mention here is that when you clean your skin, most people don't realize that what you're doing is you're removing makeup. That's good. But you're cleaning the outside of your skin. And what you want to really do is you want to have follicular cleansing. So you can wash your face 10 times a day and it's not going to help your acne. But if you're using something that actually gets into the follicle and virtually none of the cleansers, the molecules are too large, they're not going to go in your follicle, but glycolic acid does. So
Okay.
you get in that follicle, it's going to make a huge difference. Now, the second thing that causes follicles to look larger, and this doesn't have anything to do with acne. Lots of times you'll have somebody, maybe they've never had acne or haven't had it for years, and they notice that their skin looks less refined. Follicles look larger. And what that has to do with is collagen. So your follicle is a long hollow tube about as big around as the diameter of a hair, and it extends down into the dermis. The dermis acts like a kind of a girdle around your follicle, like Spanx. And so it
Okay.
keeps it nice and tight and rigid. As you age, starting around the age of 20, you lose collagen. And at 20, you're going to start losing about 1 to 2% a year, but it depends on how much sun damage did you have. Are you a smoker? What about your diet, your lifestyle? And then when you hit between the ages of 37 and 39, that's perimenopause, it's going to speed up. And between perimenopause and menopause, which is on the average of 49 to 51, it has sped up. And then within the first 5 years after menopause, you're going to lose another 30% of your dermis.
Hmm.
And then you're going to start losing it at 5% a year. So when you get into your 60s and your 70s, you've lost as much as 85% of your dermis. And so you don't have that nice firm girdle around your follicles. Now, one of the things that using glycolic acid and retinoids do is glycolic acid thickens your dermis about 33%. Retinoids, the right retinoid, so I'm not talking about the drugstore and the department store, but the right retinoid will thicken your dermis up to twice as much. And some of the more recent studies have said 1 year of consistent use, 90%.
Wow.
That can make a huge difference in the appearance of your follicles. Now, one other thing I want to mention, I said two things, but I'm going to say three. So you've got they're erector pili muscles. Now, erector pili muscles are what give you goosebumps, your hair stands on end,
Mhm.
and they also, as you age, these are little micro contractions on the surface of the skin. And these little micro contractions as you age are kind of like what happens with dynamic muscle movement having to do with Botox, but to a much lesser degree. So this is superficial. And what happens is it can actually cause another reason why your skin doesn't look quite as smooth and as glassy looking. Everybody wants glass skin.
Mhm.
So really reflective and smooth. If we can go after those little micro contractions. Now, one of the ways that that's done today is with what they call baby Botox.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So baby Botox is where they take the Botox and they just kind of stab it all over your face. So it has nothing to do. It's not going to get rid of your lines and wrinkles. It's not going to get rid of your crow's feet. It strictly goes after those micro contractions. Now, we actually have a technology coming out, and I'm hoping by the end of first quarter, and this is something that topically goes after those micro contractions and just gives your skin that amazing, smooth, glassy, kind of poreless look.
Hmm.
And not only that, but I did something else in there. So there's a lot of research coming to the forefront about vitamin K. Vitamin K we think of for bruising, but also it can protect your collagen and it can have an effect on the vascular structure and some other really good things. So I put some vitamin K and arnica in there so that individuals who maybe do get injectables, that it will rapidly lessen their bruising. They'll have much quicker recovery. So it does double duty.
Double duty. I can't wait to see what
Mhm.
that is, Jen.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something about the enlarged pores because, again, things that I've heard over my lifetime in this industry are things like if you have combination skin or oily skin that causes you to have larger pores, or sun damage will cause you to have larger pores. It's not that?
So if you have oily skin and you have retentive matter in your follicle, which causes the follicle to expand, it can play a role.
Okay.
But there are people who have incredibly oily skin and their pores are really not noticeable. They may not have acne, they may just have oily skin. And there are people that have dry skin that have really large pores.
Really? Because it's
So it
unusual,
has to
though,
do,
right?
pardon?
It's unusual, though, because usually people that we see with dry skin are very, very, very tight pores. That's what I've noticed.
No, not necessarily, because acne can happen if your skin is oily, if it's combination, or if it's really, really dry.
Okay, very
So if
interesting.
you have really dry skin and you don't have any acne, then chances are your pores are going to be a lot less noticeable. However, they will enlarge as you get older with loss of collagen.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
I want to go into that. The next question off of this topic is how can someone tell what kind of skin type they have? Like if they're like, I'm
Okay.
starting into this and they're just like, I have no idea what kind of skin type I have. What are the indicators and like how can they tell?
So, okay, so usually what I do is I'll say to somebody, so what type of skin do you think you have? Do you think it's normal? Do you think it's dry? Do you think it's combination? 99 out of 100, they're going to say combination. So I'll say, so where do you think you're oily?
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, my nose gets a little oily. That's not combination, that's actually normal. So normal skin is where you're pretty balanced, but almost everyone is going to get a shiny nose now and then, and depending on the weather. Combination skin would be where you have more T-zone oil, and that T-zone oil could be where it's not that noticeable. Maybe at the end of the day, you just feel like you're a little shiny, or it could be you're blotting through the day, or it could be like, wow, I really feel like I'm oily in that area. It can go through all of those particular um, dynamics.
Hmm.
And if you have dry skin, that's you're dry everywhere, everywhere. If you say your skin is oily, you're oily everywhere.
Hmm.
So a lot of times people who have an so-called oily T-zone, they'll say, "Oh, I have oily skin." No, not unless you're oily everywhere.
Hmm.
And typically people who are oily everywhere, they're not only producing oil, but they're producing oil that's actually somewhat thicker. And if you use a normal cleanser on them, they don't feel like it's cutting through the oil. So in those cases, and that's the only time I don't do it on combination skin as I would do a glycolic cleanser that's an oily skin cleansing gel, because when it cuts through the oil, their skin, after they get done cleansing, they're going to say, wow, I just feel nice and soft and normal. The
Mhm.
rest of us, it would be a little too much.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much how you judge your skin type.
So it's pretty like simple.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
simple.
It's simple. You got to ask the right questions. I also sometimes will add in things like, when people say I'm oily, and I say, well, tell me what your skin feels like after you wash it. Tell me what it feels like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You kind of go through the day, because they
Mhm.
often if you're oily pretty quickly everywhere after you wash your face, right?
Yeah, usually can, if you're really oily, and that has to do with how much oil, because you can be oily everywhere, but it can take you longer to produce that oil. But
Yeah.
most times people will start to produce oil within about 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah. IS Clinical's Active Serum is my top pick for anyone dealing with breakouts, uneven skin tone, or texture concerns. This fast-acting and results-oriented formula is clinically proven to also reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. With a potent blend of ingredients like arbutin, sugarcane extract, bilberry extract, and mushroom extract, it delivers both rapid and long-term results. Just a few drops at night and let the results speak for themselves. If you want to try this product, go to bskinenvie.ca, that's spelled BSKINENVIE.ca, and use code SKINTALKS to get 10% off your first order. Well, I want to also go off of before this last question, we talked about this trend of glass skin. And this isn't on the list, but it made me think about it, because you see this all over Instagram and TikTok, these Korean face masks.
Mhm.
And I'm dying to know your thoughts on that, because that's this like dewy, glassy skin. You put it on at night, you wake up in the morning. I feel it's kind of a spin-off of slugging, but I'd love to know what you think about it.
So first of all, putting a mask on at night is is something that's it's been around now for a few years. Overnight masks, and they don't look much different than moisturizers. But I want to just say something about sort of the Korean skin market. Right now, the Korean skin market is kind of positioned out there as you see these unbelievable, almost otherworldly skins that are just so perfect and so
Yeah.
glassy. I have to tell you, have I seen skin like that? Yes. But some of the most acne, worst skin I've ever seen is from Korea. So it goes both ways. So I don't want everybody to think that everybody in Korea has perfect skin, because that's just not true. And when our products have been in the Korean marketplace, acne products and things like that are incredibly popular, as they are in Japan or Asia or Vietnam, any of those places. So when we talk about a mask, unless it's got something in it, like a glycolic or possibly salicylic, which is a larger molecule, but it still can get into the follicle to some extent, or azelaic acid or something like that, it's going to be superficial. So what is going to happen when somebody goes to sleep? Well, depending on the thickness of the mask, it may be occlusive. And that means that during the night, the moisture and the other elements in your skin aren't going to escape. So it stands to reason that you're going to wake up in the morning and your skin is going to look plumper, and it's probably going to look, a little bit more dewy. But that's not something that's going to last very long. That's kind of a temporary feature. So I always ask people, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What do you think this mask is going to do for you? Or another question would be, if there was something you change or improve about your skin, what would it be?
Mhm.
Because if it's acne or it's discoloration or it's rosacea, a mask like this probably isn't going to do much of anything. Now, one of the things that that I also have that's going to be coming to the market later this year is something where you guys are familiar with Cleanzyme and Skinzyme.
Of course, my favorite. I
Okay,
love
those are proteolytic enzymes that digest dead and diseased tissue without hurting normal living tissue.
it.
So it's like instant gratification. And again, it's another way of making your skin look really glassy and more um, poreless looking. So I'm coming up with something that in the form of a mask that you can put on overnight over your other products, but it actually does something other than just occluding the skin. What it does is it's a very mild way of being able to digest dead and diseased tissue overnight. So when you wake up in the morning, your skin is all
Perfect.
wonderful, glassy, and
Very treatment
exfoliated.
focused. So when you put on something that's occlusive night after night like
Mhm.
that, would you consider that to be, I mean, is that dangerous to do that in a way for the skin?
Well, it depends because on the internet, when they talked about slugging, they were talking about Vaseline. And
Which is also
Vaseline would
occlusive.
not be something you'd want to put on your face every night. I wouldn't want to put it on even once because in some individuals, Vaseline creates an inflammatory process in which it's very acneogenic. It's technically doesn't have any acneogenic ingredients in it, but it's how it affects certain inflammatory aspects. I'll give you an example. If you, a lot of African Americans wear pomades and things to smooth their hair, and
Mhm.
there's something called hairline acne. They
Yep.
get big acne lesions. Why? What are those pomades made out of? It's Vaseline. They're all petroleum based.
Okay.
So I would never put anything like that on the skin. Now, if you put something, if you've got a winter weather that's really harsh and really dry, one of the things that you can put over the top of your products to kind of, in a sense, seal them in, but not be acneogenic, is we have a product called BioShield.
Yeah.
Now, BioShield is a product that's used post procedure, like if you have a peel, if you have laser, doctors use it post procedure, but it's the consistency of a primer. And what people don't realize is that this is silicone based, but there's about 2,000 different types of silicone. So one, silicone is the only thing that's ever been shown medically to actually reduce or prevent scarring because what it does is it downregulates a scarring collagen. It's the only thing that's ever been proven. But also because it can downregulate certain types of collagen or be very helpful, there's also studies that show that it can help with the appearance of lines and wrinkles. So what you do is you can put BioShield on over the top of your other products at night when really harsh weather and kind of have an extra barrier so you wake up in the morning and your skin is all nice and soft and dewy.
Yeah. And again, it has it's more treatment focused. Yeah.
And
Okay.
by the way, it doesn't just have silicone in it, it also has a, some growth factors as well.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool.
There was this huge trend for a while. It might still be a thing, but I feel like in my like world it faded. But skin refrigerators, I was seeing that everywhere, and it was like so cool to have one in your home. Blah 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 blah. Do you need to refrigerate your skincare products? And if so, what are the benefits of refrigerating your skincare
You do
products?
not need to refrigerate your skincare products. Now, let me kind of elaborate on that. So, preservatives are designed under all kinds of conditions, unless it gets like your products are sitting in 120-degree weather, under all kinds of conditions to keep bacteria from growing. And we make our products in an FDA lab, so it's the same lab that drug products are made in. And every single batch of products is tested for stability and for also whether microbes are growing in it or not.
Hmm.
So it's designed that if you put your fingers in there, it's designed that if exposed to different things, that for whatever the shelf life is, let's say 2 years, it should stay stable and not grow bacteria. Now that's really, really important. And those little spatulas that they give you with the product that make it look like, oh gosh, that's just so elegant and so luxurious and it's going to keep it clean. Unless you sterilize those spatulas every single time, you're getting a lot more bacteria than if you just wash your hands. So
Yeah.
you're introducing it into the product. Now, why would you need to keep your product in a refrigerator? Well, if it doesn't have a preservative. Now imagine this. Let's just say that I cook some food and I put it in the refrigerator and there's nothing in the food, there's no preservative. And I say to you, every day I want you to go in there and I want you to eat a teaspoon of that food. So you do it the first day, you do it the second day, you do it the third day, the fourth day is starting to look a little not so good. maybe day 5 or 6 is starting to grow mold. Are you going to keep eating it? Because maybe you might end up with food poisoning or something at some point.
Yeah.
And what about day 10? And what if about day 30? Are you going to keep eating that? So I would never use a product that doesn't have a really good tested preservative system. Every batch should be tested.
Yeah.
Because you can grow pathological bacteria. You know, pathological bacteria can even blind people.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to keep your products in the refrigerator unless you like the fact that they feel you want it's maybe it's a mask and you want it to feel really cold on your skin. We have a
Yeah.
product called micromask that's used in services, and we recommend that you refrigerate it because after you've had, let's say, some type of a service where your skin might feel kind of
Hot.
you have a little erythema or hot feeling. It really feels wonderful.
Yeah. So it's more of a, it's more for the sensation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Very, very
I love
interesting.
that.
Okay. So how about birth control, Jan? Does birth control have an effect on the skin?
It absolutely does. Okay, so generally we hear birth control as being prescribed as one of the things you could prescribe for acne. Now, birth control, here are the statistics. And the first one that ever got approval for this was orthotricycline. But today, there are many, many brands out there that might be exactly the same as orthotricycline. The reason they had the right to say that it worked for acne is because they went through millions of dollars of testing to get that approval. Doesn't mean the other brands won't work. Now, the statistics are 1/3 of the time it makes acne better, 1/3 of the time it does nothing, and 1/3 of the time it can make it a lot worse. In fact, if you didn't have acne, I've seen it where it gives people acne.
Yeah, I've gotten that.
So there are much better ways to treat acne. Now, one of the reasons why birth control pills work for some people is that birth control pills, depending on whether they're more estrogen dominant or testosterone dominant, if they're estrogen dominant, estrogen actually binds up testosterone. So it's not as likely to create a problem in interacting with the follicle. But if you're going to use a birth control pill for acne, then I think that Yaz, Y-A-Z, or Yasmin are better because they have something in them. It's a spironolactone derivative. And spironolactone actually sets up a kind of a wall between hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and the factors in your follicle known as 5A reductase, isozyme type 1 and isozyme type 2, because when they get together, they produce testosterone, and it's instant acne on the jawline, that chin area. So those two actually are the best for being able to address acne. But there's other ways to do it that are, in my opinion, a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
interesting. Very, very interesting. This is an interesting question. Why is my skin dry if I drink lots of water?
Why is your skin dry if you drink lots of water? Okay, so first of all, we're going to have to back up a little bit. And there's a fallacy that if I drink lots of water, it's going to make my skin more hydrated. That is not true. Now, if you were really, really dehydrated and you were not, I mean, you're drinking like hardly any water at all, that's a different issue that it could maybe start to affect your skin, but it would affect your organs as well, your kidneys and everything. Okay, so here's the deal. Your body holds about 62% water, give or take. Let's just say you carry a water bottle with you and you're drinking water all the time. Your body isn't going to hold on to that water. If it did, more than 62%, then you'd be like the Pillsbury Doughboy and you'd be very uncomfortable and bloated. So how many times if you eat a lot of salt and it retains water, you just feel, ugh, I feel so bloated. No, that's not what you want. So what happens is you just you pee more. And that's good because you're helping to flush out your kidneys and all of that.
Yeah.
But what determines how much water you're going to hold on to is the substances in your skin that are between the cells on your stratum corneum. So those cells are supposed to lay like shingles on a roof, and they have these really hygroscopic substances in between them, mucopolysaccharides, ceramides, phospholipids, and hyaluronic acid, and they give your skin volume and they hold on lots of water. As you age, the cells get disorganized, so your skin doesn't look as nice and smooth and as reflective. And also, you don't produce as many of these substances. So that's part of the aging process. And particularly if you've had sun damage, it happens even faster. And so when you don't have those substances in your skin, you can drink all the water you want, and it's not going to really make a difference. They have done studies, twin girls, identical DNA.
Mm-hmm.
One carries the water bottle and drinks lots and lots of water. And by the way, they both use the same skincare. And the other one just drinks water when they're thirsty. And then they test them for the amount of water in the skin. It's the same.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to rate, review, and follow us on social at Skin Talks Pod. We'll see you next week.